Hi, so in this lecture we will create our first controller and first action. So to do that, you should select controllers folder, right click on it, choose add, controller. And on this window we will choose API controller empty, the empty one. Let's keep it simple, click on add. And here, as you can see, the default is already selected, the controller part not. This is because every controller should end with the controller. This suffix is required, so we will leave it there. Otherwise it won't work. So choose your name for your class, for your controller. In my case it's going to be an example, controller, click on add. This will create our first controller. Right, here we are. As you can see, it's just a simple class with the name, which inherits from, in this case, controller base class. So if we were doing pages, we will inherit from the controller class and not the controller base. But since we are not doing pages, let's stick with the controller base. Alright, so here we have two attributes. The first one is the route API / controller. This part refers to the class name, which is, in my case, example. So the complete route will be API / example. That's the route. Next, let's create an action. Action is just a simple method. It needs to be public because we want to expose it. Public, let's return string. String, give it a name. Let's call it action, maybe action1. And we will simply return just a test. Right? So now we also need to add another route to point to this action, because with this route we were pointing to the class, not to the action. So let's do that. We will add another route on top of it. Route, and as you can see, it requires a string. So the URI part, it's completely up to you. You can choose whatever you want. And let's stick with action1. Right. So here we have our first controller with the simple action in it. Now let's build it and test it. This will build the project and launch the web browser, and it will navigate to the weather forecast class, which we don't have since we deleted. We will fix it. For now, all we need to do is just add action1 to it. And as you can see, we get our string back. Alright, so let's stop it. Here is an example of a basic controller class with a simple action which return a string. Now before we continue, let's fix the startup page, which is in launch settings.json file. Launch URL, as you can see, weather forecast, we will replace it with action1. API example parts, launch URL, action1. So now when we build project and start it again, it will point to this action. Here we are. So that's it for this video. Let's recap. Let's go back to our class. So we created a new controller. Controller should always have controller word at the end. This suffix is required. We need to inherit from controller base or controller class. The controller class will give you, will help you with the views if you're doing pages. These two attributes, they are actually not required, but it's always good to have them. You can even comment them out, it will still work. But it's always good to have it. For example, this attribute, it says that it's API controller, and that's true. This is what we're doing, so it's good to have it in there. Next we have our first action, which is, as you can see, just a simple method decorated with the route attribute, which will return a simple string. So in the next lecture we will keep building our controllers, and we will decorate our actions, create new actions and decorate them with the different attributes to make better API. Okay, see you there.